Okay, I guess we'll begin. My name is Tom Suter. I'm the founder of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. And welcome to our Thursday after lunch IT webinar series. Hopefully everybody had a good lunch. They're getting along with your week all right. And got to have your coffee with you, if you can see that. Yeah, I hope you have your coffee ready to go. This should be a very fast-paced panel. We're really excited about it. And our topic today is TIC 3.0. Let the evolution begin. I almost said revolution. I don't know if that was probably the best thing to say, but we are definitely evolving quick on this topic. I'd like to welcome all the attendees. Special thanks to Bill Lemons, Shelley Scarpelli, and the rest of the Fortinet team. Thank you for working with us on this program. Today, you can expect we're going to hear a lot from our panelists. I'm going to get right into it in a minute. But then we're going to have some Q&A, pop in a poll question or two, and then answer your questions. So we got a full house, so I want to get right into it. I want to introduce all the panelists so they can all come on live right now. We'll do a quick introduction. And we'll start off with Jerry Karen, Director, Enterprise Network Management Office, U.S. Department of State. Hi, Jerry.
Hey, good afternoon, Tom.
Yep. And next we have Alma Cole. And Alma is the Chief Information Security Officer and Executive Director, Cybersecurity Directorate at the U.S. Customs and Border Protection.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, everybody's going to ask you about that, which we'll have to get into. You have one of the best backgrounds we've seen here. This is awesome. I know we had a chance to catch up and talk about it yesterday.
I should have one of these.
Yeah, I love it. Next up, Sarah Mosley, Strategic Architect, U.S. Department of State.
How's it going?
It's going fantastic. Oh, I like your background too. It's like way cool. And then Jim Russo, Enterprise Infrastructure Solutions Technical Lead, General Services Administration. Hello.
Hello,
Jim.
Tom. Thanks for inviting us back.
No problem. Jim had the record. It was like kind of a little short, but he had the most appearances. It was like kind of like Alec Baldwin on Saturday Night Live. He was like on our first 2 webinars, so we got him back. So hopefully it won't be so long since we've seen you, Jim, but always good to see you. We also have with us Trefinia Salzman, Security Architect over at the U.S. Small Business Administration.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to have you again. You guys have had a busy summer and spring.
Yeah.
Rather interesting. And then we also have with us John Sims, Senior Technical Advisor to the TIC program, over at CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Hey, John.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. What is that background there?
It's one I just picked out of Zoom. It's very fitting. I like being out in the mountains and hiking, so I thought
you like ledges. You like being right by the ledge. That's
it.
Maybe that's something in the back of your mind. Okay, well, don't fall off. And last but not least, we have with us Bill Lemons, Federal Architect over at Fortinet.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Bill. Anyway, I just want to get right into it. I don't need any soliloquies here. And maybe you can start off, John, and talk a little bit about where CISA is with this TIC program and what we can expect in the near to far future.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So over the past year and a half, the TIC program's been focused on modernizing the guidance from the TIC 2.2, which is also known as the legacy TIC at this point, incorporating a lot of stuff that was done during the IT modernization, leading up to M1926, which is the policy that really facilitated the change for TIC 3.0. And so what we've really been focused on is how do we take that legacy implementation of 2.2 and revise it to support modern technologies, but more specifically cloud. Most folks that have been moving into cloud over the last several years have noticed that the hairpin nature of the architecture of TIC, which was serving a very important purpose back in 2007 when it was put in place, doesn't really fit well with the cloud model in terms of like the efficiency and cost effectiveness of utilizing cloud today. So knowing what was done back in 2017 with IT modernization, it was time to really step outside of that 2.2 box and really see what we needed to do to change the architecture to support not only boundary protections, but also, in support of cloud in particular, looking at the application layer, looking at that defense in depth from the border all the way into the application, so that as we start transitioning to TIC 3.0, redoing the security here, we can start moving also in the direction of zero trust. So what we're really trying to do with 3.0 right now today is tee up the foundational elements which will support a robust architecture to facilitate zero trust in the future.
Fantastic. And we'll get back with some more questions after I get through all the panelists. And Jerry, do you mind going? Jerry is also the chair of our TIC working group, and we've set up something called the TIC Demonstration Center. And Jerry, it'd be great to thank you for your leadership there, first of all, and it'd be great to hear what updates we have with the center.
Well, first of all, Tom, let me say thank you for letting me do it, because it's been quite rewarding group to be able to be participating in. The participation has been great. And I think we're actually ready to start the vendor demos are being scheduled starting the end of this month through the beginning of, I believe, December. We got so many. So what we've done is we've developed some use cases. We got about 5 high-level use cases with some details within each use case. All the government agency participants looked at those as well, had a chance to provide their feedback. Then what we've done is we've taken those, and of course we got, CISA has since published their volumes 1 through 3. And what we've provided each vendor, they built their architecture within the Equinix facility. Thank you to Equinix for providing the facilities. And then what they're doing is they built out their architecture, and they have an outline now which they're going to present from, that is kind of their guide, so that when the participants see the demos, they have to have an apples to apples comparison. So they got certain things that they're being asked to cover within those outlines. We've had great participation, like I said, Cisco, Thousand Eyes, Zscaler, Fortinet, Palo Alto, Trend Micro, F5. We also have Attack IQ to provide, because I'm a person, if anybody knows me, I'm more about effectiveness than compliance. So Attack IQ is providing us some threat scenarios that they can run through in the demos as well to show the effectiveness of their solutions. And WWT for any follow-ons if people want to do labs as a service, things like that, also participating. So we got great participation from the government representation and agencies, as well as the vendors. So pretty excited. So like I said, they're about to start presenting at the end of this month. They each have their own day, their own hour to do their presentations. Like I said, it's against an outline that we want it to be an apples to apples, so the audience doesn't have to try to figure out and everything, but they have enough flexibility to showcase their solutions. So real excited that we got to this point. And thank you to all the vendors. I gotta say that the participation and the cooperation has been great, and they're doing this on their dime, which is the other thing. They've made a concerted effort, put their top people on these and their architectures and their build outs, because really it's great for them to be able to go build it in one place through this proof of concept facility, and a lot of people come see it. So thanks to ATARC for providing that kind of facilitation and that platform to do that. And thank you to all the people that have participated. So I'm looking forward to the demos coming up at the end of the month.
Yep, should be fantastic. And those are going to be government only, not for attribution. It's a private discussion. We think that, ATARC's role is to bring the different perspectives. And at the end of the day, we want people to have good remote secure solutions. So I think that'll accomplish that. Next up, I will go to Sarah Mosley, who's actually at the Department of State now. And she used to be the TIC manager for quite some time, as I recall.
That's correct. With the legacy. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. How long were you in that role?
Oh, wow. Probably 4 years, I think, maybe 4 or 5 years. And then we kind of handed it off, but still very much involved in developing the really the kind of the concept and the ideas behind working with OMB on the policies for TIC 3.0. So it's been quite a ride, I think. Yeah.
Great, right. It would be great to get an update on what your new role is and over at State.
Sure. Yeah. So I just joined State just a couple months ago, supporting Jerry on the transformation of the Department of State's network. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is very much geared in the same as what Jerry was talking about with the proof of concepts. We're looking at how do we leverage TIC 3.0 use cases to allow for more flexibility while still maintaining security for our user base. I mean, I myself, just transitioned off of one agency, FDIC, and then joined State during the pandemic. And so I think just seeing that firsthand as a consumer of the IT services and how processes had to change and how there had to be flexibility there and still maintaining security, but how do you actually balance that between what the user needs are and how the user would have the flexibility, whether it's BYOD or it's actually a GFE. You still want to be able to deliver the services in a way where they can consume it and feel like the visibility is there. So we're putting a lot of emphasis into making sure we get stakeholders in early and we talk to all the the whole life cycle, including the O&M end of the, once you have something in place, you need to be able to maintain it. And it goes back to that, how do you redo your processes? How do you redo your policies to actually adapt and make sure that it can be maintained? So that's some of the work that I'm working on Jerry's team with the folks at Department of State.
Fantastic. Next up, let's bring Alma Cole into the situation. And you got to take a little bit of bonus time to tell us a little bit about the drone. Good to see you again.
Yeah, Tom, thanks. You too. So I'm Alma Cole, I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at U.S. Customs and Border Protection again. So TIC and I have a great relationship going all the way back to the TIC 1.0 and 2.0 working groups. DHS itself was early adopters, and I would say that TIC and the Einstein program was closely associated with that. Those were actually really, really key and critical programs for us to be able to wrap our arms around, especially a lot of the APT threats and things, where we really, I think to that point, before we started consolidating the gateways and enhancing the monitoring, ensuring we had the right controls, and that we were doing proactive security. Before we did that, it was one department with a really, really strong emphasis on, operational capabilities, those gateways. I think it was a real challenge to effectively combat a lot of the bad guys that are coming at you every day, especially across a very distributed environment. So, as we now, look at where we've been, with the cloud technologies coming in place, with all the as a services, and really with the modernization of the architectures, especially with the use of internet as transport and all the SDN capabilities, and really the sort of, even looking now at the pandemic and the all the work from home that folks are doing, it just makes sense to be able to go directly into those cloud resources as much as possible without having to, do this big round robin, coming into agency and through a traditional VPN and back out and around the corner and then through the TIC and in through MTIPS and on through E3A and everything else. And it's just not resilient anymore, right? It's at this point, it's actually putting a bigger target on some agencies from like denial of service attacks and things, or from just, other, unintentional outages. Where you have an outage in one service and it could take down everything else. So it's become probably not necessarily more of a liability, but there's certainly challenges there, and that's why TIC 3.0, and I've also been able to be on the TIC 3.0 working groups, why that's so critical. And I'm very thankful for like Sean Connolly and others at CISA who have been leading the charge in actually seeing the challenges that agencies have had and modernizing, or at least allowing us to start modernizing the architecture. For us, what that actually means, I think, is where you used to have, hey, well, TIC is this big service. It's got everything, all of these different things, your internet and your VPN, your outbound internet, your inbound like web hosting, and your extranet gateways and email and all those things, all as one big service. You had to have everything. Now it opens us up to be able to start breaking those services apart and getting those out to very, very resilient, high performing, modernized SaaS providers or our own services within the cloud environment that can actually also work very, very well with cloud architecture, and also where we still have the same requirements where we can also meet the same goals of TIC 1.0 and 2.0, where we can consolidate and centralize the logs and have great threat management and great visibility across all of these points. But now they're much more distributed, resilient, modernized, and it's like we're really giving up nothing, but we have so much to gain by breaking them apart and transforming out with these best of breed individual services instead of having all of our eggs in that one TIC basket. So in CVP we pushed super hard on cloud and SaaS and everything else as most have, and our network's absolutely undergoing some massive transformations. And we are now acknowledging that the old network model, everything trusted, and here's our moat, everything trusted is inside, everything untrusted is on the outside. We're beyond that now, and so we're moving rapidly into zero trust and everything else that goes along with that. And it's an exciting time to be here. As far as this guy, I have a number of CVP backgrounds specific to different discussions. This is one of my favorites. One of our Predator unmanned aerial systems, not to be confused with the drone, because the drone doesn't have a pilot, but this obviously has pilots. There's on the ground that gives just unmatched visibility and sustainment for aerial operations and being able to keep an eye across miles and miles and miles and miles of terrain in a very, very effective way with a platform that has a lot of different sensor packages that you can employ. And it's a little bit older technology compared to some of the new ones that incorporate a lot of machine learning and artificial intelligence. But even with that, since we have modular sensor packages and since we can do different things with the data, obviously artificial intelligence and machine learning and things definitely go into the analysis of all the data that's collected there. So great stories to tell about the progress we're making with modernization of how we do operations in the field.
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's a preview. We are working on a drone working group. I just think it's such a cool area, and everybody is starting to really, really use them. And we've got to look at things like privacy and all the things you'd normally think of, security. This is an IoT device at the end of the day, and it connects back to your network at some point. So good stuff.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Trifina, we'll go with you next. One thing, I don't know, this analogy doesn't work so well because everybody's getting so young now and I'm so old, but there was an old Life cereal commercial, Mikey. Mikey's your little brother, and if you try something new, you give it to Mikey. Maria wrote when she was at SBA and by extension you and the rest of the team over there, it's always like, okay, we're going to do the TIC 3.0 pilot. We're going to do the CDM program, CDM program. Great to have you today. Love to get an update. And oh, by the way, you had a process, was it $700 billion in loans in a couple of weeks?
Something like that. It's been pretty crazy. Previous to the SBA, I worked at a financial institution for about 12 years. So making that transition during COVID has been interesting. What I'm doing at the SBA is working on implementing Zero Trust, TIC 3.0 and SOAR. With Zero Trust, and I guess TIC 3.0 and all these other initiatives that we have going on, it's really easy to get caught in the weeds and to overcomplicate things. And so what I'm trying to do is break up these initiatives into a lot smaller wins. So speaking to TIC 3.0, what we've done at the SBA is we've broken up those use cases. Being a part of the TIC 3.0 working group has been really, it's been really great to be able to give us the resources and show us what we need to do and provide as a guidepost to creating our SBA's own use cases, and then working with our security engineering team and our NOC team to make sure that we have the correct infrastructure put in place. So.
Fantastic. And we'll get into some questions later, but Jim Russo, and I have to put a plug in for GSA. There was a gentleman there named Mark Provost that had worked for DISA, and then he worked over at GSA, and now he's retired. But the last thing he did before he left was kind of come up with this idea for a lab. And then Jim, of course, has taken that and really socialized it. We wouldn't be here today with a lab, at least, if it wasn't for Jim Russo. So thank you. And it'd be great to know at GSA how you're procuring this. How is this working with the EIS contract? And you know, you guys are critical in trying to get this service implemented.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Tom. And I want to congratulate you for putting together such a cohesive panel here. A lot of us have worked together for a while on this, and I just want to make the point that lines of communication have been open between our respective organizations for a long time, and we work well together in kind of a non-adversarial sharing environment. So I think that's a key thing for folks to recognize, that this is kind of a whole of government approach to solving the problem, and hopefully that relates well to industry, or it gets across to industry. So we've been busy since the last time that I had the pleasure of being on this Thursday webinar. And at the time, I think I talked about all the things that we were planning to do. And so let me just kind of go down the list and talk about what we did do. So we were in the midst of collecting inputs on our TIC3 RFI that we had out in the spring, and we were doing that in concert with our friends at CISA to try to figure out where we should go in making changes to the EIS contract in particular, to make it easier for both agencies to set the requirements out and for industry to create solutions. So one of the things that was integral, we thought, in enabling any TIC3 service was to get our SD-WAN, our software-defined wide area network service, in place. And we had been working on that sort of in parallel. So during the summer, we were able to complete that modification to the EIS contract, where we defined a new service called the SD-WAN service. And it shows a sort of a common structure. We put it in the same standard format that we did for all of our other services under EIS. And so it lays out things like what the standard interfaces are, performance metrics, and more importantly, sort of a structured list of here's the technical capabilities we would expect to see in any SD-WAN service. All of our prime contractors have the ability to offer that service now. They did before, but it just gives them a better structured place to offer it, and for agencies to be able to compare apples to apples. So once that is nailed up, then we start to look at, okay, what types of transport gaps do we have on EIS to really fill out a full SD-WAN implementation? And we had the MPLS service, we had our dedicated internet access through our internet protocol service, but we felt we really didn't have the bottom end there. We didn't have something similar to a business class internet. That was missing. So we set about adding a broadband, what we coined broadband internet service. And that, I guess, information draft RFI modification went out to our prime contractors during the summer. We collected their input, and we've updated that part of the modification. At the same time, we realized, working with CISA, that new guidance or updated guidance had come out, following the COVID shutdown, if I can call it that, and explosion in teleworking across all of the federal government. And so to reflect that guidance, we started to talk about, how we were going to have our TIC service ready for, when agencies were ready to get over the hump of, okay, continuity of service, got to address that 100% or 500% increase in telework and the needs to bulk up bandwidth for perhaps legacy solutions that really weren't most ideal, as Alma was talking about. But hey, continuity of service, got to keep everything operating. And I think most of the agencies are over that hump now, and they're starting to say, well, what do we what are our choices now after? We want to move past our, and of course, EIS has the legacy solution, the Managed Trusted Internet Protocol Service, the MTIP service. So many agencies have that baseline service, and they're asking, well, what can we do to move past that? And our industry partners are asking, well, we're willing to update the MTIP service any way you want to, and we've instructed them to, hey, let's leave the legacy MTIPs kind of as it is, and let's build on to that as we need to, using our managed security service. And to do that, we're creating what we're calling a TIC service that will be blended in with our managed security service. So the approach here is to, if agency or industry solution wants to use that MTIPS package as a baseline, that's fine. You want to add to it, then let's do that through the TIC service. And so we're trying to leave the legacy in place, because it still may have a place going forward. Certain segments of an agency's network still may need that on-premises solution and not really be good candidates for a cloud-based security solution. So we want to leave that there, but we recognize that there's so much now going to the cloud. Agencies shouldn't be scared about implementing a cloud-based security solution. That's where a lot of the innovation is coming from, either the CSPs or third parties. And of course, EIS is flexible enough to handle all that. We make that very clear through the ability to add those cloud services through this cloud service that's built into EIS, the catalog implementation there, which makes it easy to add those services. So we're going to continue to move forward. We're continuing to stay in step with this as they release more guidance and update the use case guidance that's already out there. And through our continued I guess we want to continue to be plugged in with the proof of concept lab with ATARC, and kind of follow along with Jerry and other users of that capability. So we're going to leverage that knowledge as well back into how we define our solution sets under EIS.
Thank you, Jim. And last but not least, we have Bill Lemons. And Bill, I'm just, as a product vendor, you tend to go to lots of different agencies. What are you seeing trend-wise when they're looking at TIC 3.0? Are there any patterns there, or what kind of approaches do you see?
I think the first pattern we saw was a little bit of just dipping the toe in the water, if you will, taking a look at what the offerings were, how it was going to play with the current environment, how complex, how challenging would it be to kind of take on that additional capability into the environment. But we've seen some increase in openness, if you will, to kind of incorporate that technology. We're excited about that opportunity to bring the more commercially available capabilities into the space. It's something that we as a company have been focusing on for a number of years, is trying to not only expand those security capabilities, but also ensure that we do it in a very integrated fashion, so that when you talk about the ideas of complexity and whether or not you have the visibility and the reporting necessary to ensure that as you grow that surface of security, if you will, right, in that hybrid concept, that you make sure that all the appropriate connectivity is in place to make sure that intelligence gets shared, and that the visibility and the reporting can be delivered in a common format, in a common way, across that environment. And so we're excited about being able to bring kind of those capabilities to bear, making sure that we can deliver those in a way that can be consumed in many different consumption models. Obviously, one of the big advents or benefits of the cloud technology was its consumption model. The fact that you didn't have to build it first, you could just consume it. And we, looking back at the history of the iterations of TIC and providing those types of services over federal networks, we've provided a lot of the building blocks in that build it and they will come kind of architecture, and we understand that that's not the only way to do it. It's obviously a component. We want to make sure that as agencies need to build out that custom infrastructure to support those workflows and capabilities to support those missions, that we're also cognizant of the fact that you need to be able to have those alternate consumption models as well in the cloud. So not only is it taking those exact same capabilities and extending those into leveraging cloud environments just with over infrastructure as a service, if you will, installing our capabilities there, but also offering as a service offering as well. So we're really excited about a new acquisition that we had for some SDN technology earlier this year, where we're taking our common technology, putting it under that framework, and are going to be able to come out with a service offering here at the end of the year, approaching the new year, that'll provide that additional consumption model, that SASE model, if you will, but yet still get the same benefits and capabilities that we were able to deliver as a traditional custom TIC vendor and supporter of the NTIPS environment.
No, thank you for that. My first question is going to be for everybody, but maybe we can start off with you, Alma, because we went in depth about it. Since pandemic, a lot of these networks has changed, the bandwidth. What is the future? Where do you see your network going into the near future? What's that going to look like?
Yeah, so there's some guidance that's probably going to get updated here for this next year's FISMA report around VPN specifically. And what's interesting from security department's perspective is they're actually dropping what we used to be security controls off of VPN off of the requirements for reporting. Specifically, it's for dual split tunneling and for the timing out VPN connectivity. And those are actually things that we actually had to hit on very, very early on in the pandemic for our configurations, which were previously something we had as explicitly prohibited in policy, right? Because you want to make sure all your traffic is going directly into the agency and directly to the TIC and things. Well, now we have so much traffic that's coming inbound that I think by itself, just the amount of volume of teleworkers that are using open internet to be able to connect back in. It was a forcing function for a lot of agencies to maybe embrace some of the architectures for doing some of that split tunneling and routing directly into the cloud. Basically, it was something they just had to do if they were to keep their heads above water. And we're looking at the same thing too, even with patching directly from Microsoft as an example. Just anything we can do to sort of make sure that we're going the most efficient paths possible whenever we can. But more practically, I think we are getting into, again, the zero trust area for all these endpoints. And now instead of treating everything like, well, you are a trusted endpoint and we're going to put you in the middle of this big network of all these things that we're really, that are pristine, that we trust explicitly, that all have some base level of access to do lots of things and touch other things on the enterprise. That model is now gone. It's basically every asset would now act like something that's VPNing in, however they get connectivity, but then they're only exposed to explicitly what they need to, what they should have access to based on their system, which is also identified. So we don't talk about identification for the systems very much, but that's a key piece of it. So the system has a profile. There's a risk profile on the system based on what it is and what its compliance levels are, how frequently it's been patched, whatever our policies are, but then also the user having explicit permissions to access only particular applications and services. So now what used to be this big, wide attack surface, now it's really these narrow sort of pinpricks within the environment that are explicit to that system and that user and only what they have access to. And we're now at the point where the technology has come far enough where we can potentially do this large scale, whether that's sitting in a building that we own and that we trust, where we have guns, gates, and guards, or where that's someone that's at home with their laptop and they're coming in over whatever connection that they have, or whether they're going directly into the cloud or coming back on-prem for other things first. But either way, the security model ends up being the same, and that's that zero trust security model that gets thrown around a whole lot, but it's incredibly transformational. And from an architecture and networking perspective too, again, we're getting away from these big, huge circuits that we have to have everywhere towards now, being able to leverage effectively, any sort of commodity internet access that we could get, which is usually, cheaper, way faster, and very often more reliable. A lot of the dedicated circuits we had, even under some of the legacy like GSA contracts and things like that. But because it's so cheap, we can build in layers of resiliency with things like cradle points, for example, which allow you to dynamically shift over to using wireless if your wired networks go down. So lots of really, really exciting changes that are happening here that's just completely transformational from a security architecture perspective.
Yeah, Trevinia, you want to add to that? That was great, Alma. And I think that the wireless component is such a big thing now. The speeds are getting crazy, and we have a 5G working group where it's going to be a lot faster to go through your phone through the cellular network than it will be from the landline. And
quickly, we actually have had sites that have gone down, I think last year during the hurricane, that we brought back up over 4G, where we were getting better speeds and better performance than we ever had over the wired networks. So it's been phenomenal.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Alma. Trevinia?
Yeah, adding to what Alma was saying about the zero trust and the TIC 3.0, they're so intertwined because they're taking the idea of looking at our data from afar, from using that MTIPS, right, that TIC access point, back to the data at the system, the applications. And so that's what we're doing at SBA. We're looking at, not only doing that MTIPS, but utilizing agency to branch configuration by using enabling SD-WAN, looking at remote users, and eventually bring your own device is what we're looking at towards the future for SBA.
Great.
Yeah.
Sarah, I know you're not just on TIC 3.0, you're on zero trust, and these two topics blend together. Yeah,
absolutely do. Yes, I think TIC is a foundation part of the zero trust discussion, and the whole concept of trust zones and how you really focus on the data. And as Trevinia mentioned, the data is really what we are trying to protect. And ultimately, what you want to do is you want to really look at where you need to actually apply the protections, right? So it's not a one size fits all. So we've got to actually balance between, like, for example, just a mission of Department of State with public diplomacy, they're actually putting information out. Their information is not necessarily sensitive. It's information that they want to actually put out there, right? Versus you talk about consular affairs, where they're issuing visas and they're doing background, checks and things like that. And so you do have to look at where it's important to apply those parameters and those trust zones that are going to really apply and be effective. And goes back to what Jerry was saying about effectiveness, right? So we want to really focus more on how we can make security effective, get the bang for your buck, and be able to shrink that really that threat surface at the same time, yet allow the flexibility for those that do actually need to get information out there and not tether them, to a desktop, and make sure that they have the ability to do what they need to do. So I think that's kind of our focus is being able to understand the data and understand where to start first, and how the sensitivity and the level of data is going to matter in how we're really re-architecting the network.
That's fantastic. And John, I want to get back to you. We're CISA looking at all this. I know you talked a little bit about it in your intro. It's like we're already going from TIC 3.0 to talking more and more on zero trust.
Yeah, so I think some of the things that have been brought up about data, making sure that there's an awareness of the type of data, the value of it. I think that one of the other areas I worked in before I was working with TIC specifically was a high value asset program. And I think one of the things we have before us is an opportunity to take, stock in the fact that we've been inventorying our high value asset systems and data in the government for a number of years now. And so I think we have a better awareness of the interconnectivity of those of those systems, not only within an agency, but from agency to agency. And I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for us to really look at, that as a problem set, to really wrap the zero trust and also the concepts that we're pushing in TIC 3.0 to provide more robust security from the boundary into the applications. Because, when we start looking at the federated nature of some of the connections between these systems, we've really got to understand that. We've really got to have eyes on that to really make sure that those systems are adequately protected. One of the key aspects of TIC 3.0 versus the TIC 2.2 and previous versions is a shift from compliance to actually leveraging the risk management, the flexibility baked into the selection of security capabilities. And to me, that's like the best approach we can take to really making sure that what is important to protect can be protected in a way that the agency can manage, within their risk thresholds, to make sure that those systems are online, that they're secure, and they're accessible. So I think those are the things that we're really trying to make sure we're connecting the dots on, making sure that we're working with the vendor community to develop control overlays, to map our capabilities to cloud native or vendor native capabilities, so that we're not bolting things on, along the way. So that's probably the best answer I can give you at this point.
That's good. Jim, you've got a little challenge of it. This is zero trust is more than a network thing. It's more than a cloud thing. It's more than a wireless thing. And you're involved with all of these things. So how is GSA going to build them some zero trust that agencies are going to buy? How do you do that?
Well, we've got this spaghetti chart that I often show when I do presentations that it intentionally puts TIC 3 in the center of that universe. I guess technically that's not correct, but it shows that the story goes back even further than what we've been talking about. I mentioned earlier that SD-WAN we saw as an enabler to allow you to even begin to think about doing microsegmentation or zero trust type of approach. But before you can even get to that, we've continuously been encouraging agencies, and we're getting a lot of good uptake on that, to modernize their infrastructure so that they can employ these types of solutions. And that means, getting away from the legacy TDM type services. I mean, that sounds kind of like, really? Not doing that yet? But yeah, I mean, that still has to be, it's still a focus of ours. It's still a focus to get the agencies to move that way so that they can position themselves to do this. We've got a couple of infographics we put together that we hope are helpful to our agencies, and placed them up. They're accessible through our main EIS webpage at gsa.gov/EIS. Kind of see it there above the fold of the first page. So we're hoping that at least gets some thinking going for folks that haven't stepped out like SBA. Not everybody is a leader like the folks at SBA are, and state, of course, with what Jerry's doing. So that's challenge number one. And number two is, I think, trading on exactly what John just said. The flexibility is a great tool that I think is, people may start to get wrapped up in, oh, well, I used to have one thing that was a one size fits all, and what do I have now? It's kind of back on the agency, but I think if they do a standard approach, risk-based approach, they lay out what their requirements are, and then use that overlay theme for industry, use that overlay theme to map the solution back to the agency's requirements, which would then trade on the security capabilities and even the security patterns that CISA has laid out, let's say in the branch office use case. The branch office use case is an excellent document. I mean, it really does fit a lot of the situations and use cases that we're talking about today. So I think that can really be used as a tool to help guide both sides towards just putting that basic structure in place so that you can looking at, okay, now, I've got everything in place. I have the infrastructure in place. I can do a zero trust solution set.
Jerry, congratulations on the TIC 3.0 lab. Are you going to have to be in charge of Zero Trust Lab now? Is that our next adventure?
Yes, yeah, Trafana and I are going to co-chair that one. So we've started that up already too. We had the first meeting, I think, she can correct me where I go wrong, but I think we had 5 people. And then the second meeting we just had last week, we had 38. So I expect that one's going to be pretty large. And that's just mostly the government folks. So far, we expect to invite the vendors in later on. So pretty excited about that. So when we did the TIC 3.0, we gave them, like, I have an architecture for Zero Trust that I developed, kind of gave them that because we wanted to be able to fit into a grander architecture. So that's something that we told the vendors as well, that we wanted them to keep in mind going forward. But I think everything, it's a great enabler, right? Is, you know, we're used to doing this peanut butter spread approach, you know, protect everything equally. And we know what Frederick the Great said. He said, those who try to protect everything equally, and I'll screw up this motto, yeah, you know, those who just try to defend everything, defend nothing. And that's true. You know, I joke with people, if you're 100% patched across your enterprise, well, you only have one workstation. So, you know, focusing on what really needs to be protected, you know, talking about the data is really important. And all the factors that go into a dynamic risk, right? Right now we do authentication and access. Historically, it's a one-time event. Have a nice day. It's like going to the movie theater, the ticket takers in the lobby, but there's 12 theaters. No, we can't do that with the security. We got to put the ticket takers at the movie doors. And it's got to be dynamic because things change. Yeah. So it's not just about the device. It's not just about the identity. It's how do we facilitate protections of the app and take in all the factors of conditional access and all of those things. So it's a big undertaking, but I think everybody's starting to think in the right direction, that we're going to really get to that effectiveness where we're putting the focus on the things that really need to be protected and how to protect them from end to end.
Yeah, and Frederick the Great, you're going to get quotes. You never know what you can get on this. And Jerry, actually,
well, I didn't have a cool background like other people, so I had to come up with a quote.
Well, don't you still put, when you were in the office, you would put a quote of the day. You were doing that? Or at least when I came
kind of
by,
stopped with COVID, but yeah, I had a little.
Yeah, I kind of stopped with COVID.
Cute thing on my door every day.
Every day would be something different.
Yep.
So he keeps everybody on their toes. Bill, as a product vendor, do you have anything else to add to this about Zero Trust and where we're going in the future here?
Well, I definitely echo the sentiments that they're so tightly integrated, TIC 3.0 and Zero Trust architectures. It's an area that we've invested an enormous amount of time and effort into providing capabilities that can help support that additional situational awareness. Because I think a lot of people have touched on the concepts of being able to continually assess users' activity, the flow of data through an environment, and do that on a continual basis. And it's with that, with devices that have the ability to collect that information, and systems that are smart enough to take that input and provide some sense around how that information flow is moving, what those users are doing in the community, whether or not they align to the policies and information flow directives that are in place, and can feed that information back to the systems that do the controls, right? So the policy enforcement points, the endpoint systems, the applications themselves, or even the infrastructure that runs those applications. You know, having that connectivity and that feedback loop is an incredibly important piece to make sure all of that can work. And you know, it's great to be in a company that has kind of taken on that challenge and has a number of capabilities that help support that enhanced capability. So as the Zero Trust documents continue to mature and present the expectations of the government to us as the vendor community, and as we continue to fine tune those tools we're looking for every opportunity to bring those two together, and the working relationships that we've had here under ATARC and in the leadership of Jerry and company, and just the partnership with the agency community has been a fabulous way to kind of extend that relationship and move that forward, so that we can continue to bridge that gap and provide that technology in support of those needs.
Great, great, great. We're actually, let's do a real quick poll, and then we'll close up the program. There's an interesting couple of questions here. Alyssa, if you can pop this up, and everybody can answer really quickly. This is like, we're not doing our job, John and ATARC, but hopefully they're people are getting more aware of this. And I think what's interesting is, have you mapped your solutions against security capabilities established by CISA for specific use cases? Okay, we'll just leave that up for 10 more seconds, and I think we can close it. All right. Okay, we got an honest crew out there. Good. That's why you guys come here, so you can learn. Yeah, I think that those use cases you outlined, John and Sean et al., I think they were really well thought out, and it wasn't telling you exactly what to do. These are the use cases, and you come back and how do you meet them? I think that was a really fantastic idea. John, anything surprised you there?
No, actually, the only thing that surprised me maybe was, the industry partners that have not contacted us either through GSA, through Jim's team, or directly to the TIC PMO. We really, for those that really are interested in providing, TIC solutions to the government, we really encourage you to, work with your agencies, work with us to continue to cultivate and develop the concept of the overlays. It's going to drive a more robust security architecture. It's going to allow us to provide the visibility we need collectively, not just at the agency, but CISA as well. And that partnership is just absolutely critical in this day and age for us to crack the rest of this solution and keep moving forward and to innovate.
Yeah, and I think each agency has a TIC 3.0 representative, if I'm correct, right? They all have a delegate.
They do indeed, yes.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that real quick, that poll question. We really do think that, if someone from industry is coming in with a new product, innovative solution, that if they can show an agency that, hey, we've taken the time, we've looked at the CISA guidance, here's how we map our solution to the guidance for this particular security pattern, let's say. I think it will go a long way and give a lot of credibility to that company's pitch. So, we thought it was important to put that out there as sort of a, best practice to think about as you're coming to us and coming to CISA and saying, hey, we've got a better mousetrap. So it's kind of the first step to show me.
So Jim, is it okay if I send everybody out your number and your contact info? They can actually find you if they Google you. And Alyssa,
unfortunately, that's correct.
How about this? We'll send out the deliverables that you guys have produced, and we'll send those out to everybody so they can link back and start to really think about it. Okay, what do we want to do next? I think we should close up. We're somewhat here through pandemic. I think we've had enough conversation. We've gotten people, the VPNs have been increased. We've increased our bandwidth. We've done a lot of that. How is the work going now? I think we've had a few months here. So how is the work going now? And how do we look to work in the future when we have some folks back in the office? I'm just kind of, philosophically, it'd be great to, and Alma, if you could chip into that conversation. How are we going to be working in the future? What's our future state?
Yeah, I mean, I think this blew a door open for sure, right? So, my security operations center, for example, before they were not eligible for telework, they needed to be in the room to do the job. And then, all of a sudden, we couldn't be in the room anymore. We really embraced Microsoft Teams. I think a lot of people did that. We've been big WebEx users for a long time, and obviously there's a lot more services that are out there. But as we start getting in that, not just doing video conferences, we have a watch floor. We have video up for that all the time. It's like a virtual watch floor, and we started using a lot of the other features in the collaboration platforms much more extensively. And based on all that interaction, my director for my security operations directorate had said that, hey, he thinks they're actually communicating and collaborating better than we were when we were in the room together. So that really begs the question of, okay, so what's this like in the future once the pandemic clears? And can we do things like virtual SOCs? Could we hire people, across the country and potentially never have them set foot inside a government building, but have them work where they're at, and really as a way to retain some of that higher cyber talent, but not make them move to DC to get it. So lots of potential that's now there based on our proving that this actually can work. We do lose some things. There's a little bit lost in not having direct face-to-face and sort of after meeting and water cooler type discussions. So it's not all roses, but we're certainly really pleased with how effective we've been able to still operate.
And Jim, maybe we'll go with you. I mean, I know you've had telecommuting at GSA and you've embraced it, but usually there's people in the office. Now, how's it been interesting in your world?
Well, it's actually been a real shift. There was, even with all of the teleworking that GSA was doing, and kind of we were sort of the poster agency for that, there was still sort of a different perception of an in-office day versus a telework day. And now, and even a perception of, I'm in DC area and I have a teammate, say in Chicago or Denver or whatever. Now that's completely gone. By the use of the tools that Alma was talking about, we use the Google Suite, but we also use Zoom and WebEx and Teams like everybody else. The immediacy of the video conferencing. I think we're having more conversations among ourselves and our teams than ever before. And there's an immediacy there that it's on steroids now, with instant chat and hey, I'm not just going to call you, I'm going to video call you, and that brings an immediacy, especially as we're bringing on new associates that, hey, we've never seen them in person, but we have video chats with them a couple of 3 times a week. So it's enabled us to do what was kind of unthinkable before.
Yeah. How about John? How's CISA? Because that seemed like going to your office. There was a lot of people working, in person.
Yeah, so there's still a portion of CISA that does go into the office, but I've only been in twice in the last, well, actually since the 13th of March. And I'll be honest with you, the 2 times I was in, for meetings, it was kind of weird. But, and I'm sure others probably feel the same way, because, now you're seeing everybody with masks on, you're glad to see them, but it's like, it's just a very different feeling and a different vibe. And I think that, our leadership, Director Krebs and Deputy Director Travis, they've been huge proponents of embracing telework, remote work, and they're trying to lead the way in DHS to make sure that this is a posture we're going to be in for a long time. They want our employees to know that, and they're extremely supportive of making this a permanent feature within the organization. So the leadership's been phenomenal. I would just say that the surge in telework and what have you really pushed us forward. That was kind of we took the anchors off in April when we released interim telework guidance, and it really just pushed not only our organization but the entire federal government into a realm, like I think Alma was saying, that it just blew the doors open. So I think it's been beneficial for us, and I don't foresee us going back to business as usual back like we were in February.
Yeah, we've got a remote workforce group that we're starting to look at all these issues. It's going to be beyond technology, because I know it's changed way ATARC's work forever. I mean, you know, we went from one meeting a week, and now we talk. I think the new water cooler is about 5 minutes before I jump on the call. That's when really the good action happens. That's when I'm hearing all this good stuff. You know, then we go on in the meeting. It's not as good as the 5 minutes beforehand. Sarah, we just got a couple minutes, but I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to say something. And you've been in a couple of organizations now, so you've really got some good, and you got hired and onboarded.
Exactly. Onboarded, offboarded, onboarded, exactly. And I can't even imagine this discussion 5 years ago, right? I mean, it's just with the prevalence of the availability of the collaboration tools and cloud and everything. I think we can have that conversation, and I think we can be productive. And I've seen that, and we've seen just how well we can actually work. I would echo everything everybody said. The one thing I would say is it's almost is kind of the opposite effect, which is that how do you disconnect at the end of the day, right? So, I mean, we had this, at FDIC, Sylvia Burns, our CIO, constantly said, hey, you know, make sure you actually take breaks, make sure you actually finish off your day and don't just continue to, you know, respond to emails and respond to chat, you know, all of that. So I think this is where you're really kind of interconnecting that kind of personal time with the productive, you know, your work time. And so it's also the ability to actually be able to balance those as well. But I echo everything everybody said.
Yep. I almost have to block some time for thinking, because I can't even, it's like lurching from one thing to the next. It's like I'm doing the webinar 1 minute and I think I'm, you know, I got like 10 minutes for the next thing.
Somewhere in there you have to eat, right? You know, sometimes you're like, oh, I didn't have lunch. So.
Somehow I've managed to get that down. I don't know how. You know, you think I'd lose weight during this thing. I think I probably gained weight. Trevenia?
Yeah, so I had a unique experience as well. I worked in the private sector before, and now onboarded during COVID, so started in June. And coming into an environment where you don't get to meet the people that you work with has been really interesting. But it's also given me the opportunity to be very intentional. So scheduling, I call it scheduled networking meetings, and they're like 15-minute meetings that I'll schedule with people from other agencies or from people within my agency, just so I can understand what people are doing and who does what kind of thing. So it's definitely been interesting to pivot from all in person to this model of completely remote.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And Jerry? No sticky notes on your office door anymore, I guess.
No, the dog doesn't like to read them, so. But I going into the office, and I love it because now there's no drive-bys. So I get more drive-bys when I'm working from home, which I'm doing today. So it's really quiet in the office. But I mean, it's the new normal, I think. It's really, as you know, when we first started, people were, you know, struggling with some of the tools and how to use them, because you got to remember, we're all IT people. Not everybody's an IT person in our agencies. But now they're getting used to it, and I think they're embracing them and things like that. So, you know, once they have something and they get used to it, you're not going to take it away. So, you know, now we got to think about, all right, this is the new normal. How are we going to move forward? So that's kind of what we're doing right now. Even at the highest levels of the department, they have what they're calling a reimagine task force for how we are moving forward with technology and how people work for the future. So, I mean, at the highest levels of our agency, they are looking at this now as making this more of a permanent thing and how we support folks as well.
Thank you. And Bill, I think you're going to wrap it up for us. How do you develop products and all these kinds of things that you think that everybody has to be in the same room? I guess not. You figure out a way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the vendor community, I think, is one that you know, anyone that's in the technology space has embraced remote work for quite some time, especially when you talk about the sales organizations out there. So it wasn't an enormous shift for us. We kind of had a lot of the infrastructure and the policy in place to kind of make that happen, but But again, there were other areas of the company that were very traditional, very location focused as far as their interactions and the applications that they use. So even us as organizations needed to pivot a little bit as well. But we were probably maybe a little bit more prepared to support that increase. And while it's a major pendulum swing just because of the pandemic and the environment that we've had to deal with, it's going to swing. But I think it's going to fall somewhere in the middle. I think a lot of people weren't sure how it was going to be received. They received it very positively in many circumstances. And we're going to land somewhere in the middle. And it's going to draw even that much more on the technology to help enable and ensure that you can do that not only in an effective manner, right? Making sure that people can still do their jobs and do them incredibly effectively, but also do it in a secure manner as well. So
Right.
bringing those two things together are definitely the challenge that we and the other vendors in our space are definitely challenged to bring to bear.
Great. Well, we went a little over time today, but I think it was worth it. Anyway, thank you, Jerry, Alma, Jim, Sarah, John, Fenia, and then Bill, and thank you to Fortinet for helping us out with this, and just a great discussion. I enjoyed this very much, and we'll be next week. We're actually going to be continuing on the TIC 3.0. We're gonna have to change that title. It might have to change the revolution by next week, but we're gonna focus more on the network side, and we'll be continuing this discussion. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so long.